Peace be with you. I wanted to make another video about addiction, because addiction is so important that it is one of the most dangerous diseases that a young person may experience in Western society. It is near and present danger. That's why I keep making videos about it. And a lot of my videos come from the point of view of the Quran. So I find that an essential ingredient of making preventing or giving a chance to your kids not to be exposed to drugs. Because what addiction is just addiction to a feeling. It's a feeling that we chase. So that's why some people are addicts to uppers, some people are addicts to downers, some people just like all drugs. But there is an initial preference, and if you have a good experience, it's just like with gambling. With gambling, if you have a great experience in one of the first couple of times when you go, that's when you become addicted. If you win the first time you go, that's the worst thing that can happen to you, because you're going to chase that ghost, and you're going to think it's that easy until it traps you. And that's the same thing with try any drug. You may hate one, but you may like another. So the first step to addiction is getting a taste of the experience. And the experience don't care if it comes from a physician's bottle, your pharmacy's, your kid has Adderall, or if it comes from a crack house, your kid gets meth. On a dose-dependent fashion, they provide exactly the same experience. Once you get that experience, and if you really like it, you're going to want to do it again, and you're going to want to do it again, and you're going to want to do it again. And for a fraction of people, that leads to a habitual behavior, a self-destructive behavior. And that can be my kid, and that can be your kid, and that can be anybody's kid. If they get exposed to these feelings, we as humans want to experience more of what we like. And that risk is even more pronounced on a young, naive, developing brain. When we are young, all of us are very impulsive and are more prone to trying things and not assessing the risk of them, because it's either not known in society or not well advertised. Once people learn, for example, the opioid epidemic now is kind of, heading out, because a lot of the addict died. But now we're seeing the effects of overprescribing of Adderall for the last several years. So, my opinion, the medical community has done to the population, through overprescription of Adderall, the same disservice that they've done to it through overprescription of opioids. You're exposing people to the feeling that they should not be exposed to, because it leads to addictive behavior. That is just one of the avenues of entry into this business, though. A lot of times young people, they'll enter into addiction through friends. Addiction is also a contagious disease. You do not catch addiction out of the ether. You have to either know somebody who's an addict, you have to live in these high crime neighborhoods where addiction is very common. And the more common addiction is around you, the higher chance your kids have of catching this disease, because they may come into contact with the infected people a lot more. That's why it's important to keep your communities clean from this. Yeah, because it is a contagious disease. So when you hear that a kid got caught in school with drugs, you can already, you got to think of it in terms of COVID, right? What would we think if a kid was, in class with COVID? You would think, shit, did my kid catch this? That's how it is with addiction. You don't even know if your kid has it, right? You hid it from your parents, I hid it from my parents. You don't know. So that's the second thing. That's another danger, being in environments where this is frequent. The greater the frequency of this infection, the greater the likelihood that it will affect your kids, because at that age is when we're most vulnerable. It starts with the feeling, and then it progresses to this obsession with compulsively looking for the experience. You're chasing the experience, and if that experience comes from a heroin bag or Adderall or meth pipe, it doesn't matter. Or slot machine, it doesn't matter. That's what you're looking for. But then, as you indulge in this disease, it becomes not only a obsession, but it becomes a habit. It's something you do, something you identify as your life. So you literally have to quit something. You have to give up your life. Everything that you identified as, you have to give it up. It's basically like dying to stop being an addict. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing from the just medical standpoint of obsession and compulsion. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It's not hard to understand how an obsession that turns into a habit of all things and turns into a coping mechanism in the end can be easily, it's hard to perceive this being easily removed. Because once you indulge in drugs, and if you are unlucky enough to have ruined your life, then it becomes like just an escape. I destroyed my life. You have this despair. You have no faith in God. That God will pull you out of that. Even if you think you've destroyed everything in your life and life will never be good, you just never. You got to have faith in God and fix it and see what happens. That's the whole thing. That's why addicts need God. Addicts, really. I know some people quit. Without anything there, but they are few and far in between. The most success rate there is with God. And now in the addiction community, they are you got some people, oh, my higher power, my higher man is God. You don't have you can say what you want, but it's God. That's your higher power. You're just choosing not to use the word God, and you think if you say a higher power, you're saying something different. No, that's God. But what if you choose to make your own thoughts your God, that's fine, but that's kind of silly to me. In any case, that's what addicts need, is God. That is where the greatest success rate is in recovery. So, trying intervention removed from educating people about God is very expensive and not very successful, because the recovery rates are not amazing, and it can take many years of this disease. It destroys people physically and mentally, it destroys families financially, and it is clear and present danger for all of us. Another avenue into this is depression. If you notice your kids are not, are depressed, they're sad, that is when they're ripe for the picking, because if the devil sends them a friend who is into drugs and they have no friends, they will take any friend, especially the one that can provide them a feeling of escape, which drugs bring. That is why it's so important not to live in a high contagion area. And if God blessed you enough with financial circumstances, you have to remove your kids from such environments. So if your school district is high in drugs, you have to get your kids somewhere else, or clean up your own neighborhood. Otherwise, there is a very high risk that your kids who are not able to make friends will try drugs and be destroyed by them. There are several different kinds of drugs. There are the benzodiazepines and alcohol I would put in the same category. So Xanny bars, Ativan, whatever, those are benzos, highly addictive substances, given out like candy for anxiety. One of the few substances that can kill you if you withdraw from them, because you can have like a prolonged seizure, you can get brain damage, it can kill you. Alcohol and benzos. If you've been on long-term benzos, so like Xanax, think about Xanax overdose, right? You pop all these Xannies, let's say you try to kill yourself. I can literally reverse that. I have a medication, it's called a flumanazole, but I will rather intubate you and put you on a ventilator if I have to for a couple days until you wake up, because essentially you're just in a deep coma because you're so drunk, because benzos act on the same receptors as alcohol. And I'll simply let it wash out your system, because if I reverse the effects and try to wake you up, if you have been on benzos for a long period of time, you can have a prolonged seizure and have brain damage. So abruptly withdrawing benzos causes dependence reaction more dangerous than the one from heroin, right? So you got to wean yourself off from that. But what you have to do is never try it. Not let a doctor give it to you. Do not take that medicine. That medicine is only appropriately used, for example, for acute grief reactions, like your child dies, or somebody that you truly you're going to be devastated about, something happens and you just cannot control it, but you should control it. But that can maybe be given for people to go to sleep at night. That's the only appropriate that. And then, take this opportunity to say, when there's a verse in the Quran that says, and they ask you about intoxicants and gambling, say, in them is a great harm and means of benefit to people, but their harm is greater than their benefit. Drugs are more destructive than they are beneficial, but there is benefit to them, and it is my job to decide when they are beneficial, and it is my job to warn people when they are not beneficial, because the potential for harm is so much greater than their benefit that they require a tight control, a person with your best interest in mind to advise you whether you should take them or not. So Ativan, Xanax, alprazolam, anything probably that ends with olam, as the generic name, is probably dangerous. But there's a bunch of them which are all benzodiazepine. That's what you should ask doctor. Is this a benzo? Are you prescribing me a benzo? And they will understand what you're saying. And if they say, yeah, it's a benzo, they say, I don't want this. It's dangerous. Yeah, it'll make you sleepy. You'll sleep like a baby. But that's how it's going to start. And then before you know it, you're going to be taking them every day. And boom, you're tethered to your doctor who's prescribing you benzos. Because a regular doctor, a doctor with your best interest in mind, would not prescribe you benzos for sleeping. It's ridiculous. That's not a benefit. I mean, it's important to sleep, but there are other less dangerous drugs for that. You can just take Benadryl. In any case, this video is getting long, but there's still so much to say. When people are addicted, they cannot be trusted. They cannot be trusted. It's just, drug is their God, and they serve that God, and whatever you do leads that way. Until they are in recovery, they cannot be trusted. And and if they are in recovery and they relapse, and they tell you that they relapsed, it is what it is. Boom, you got to be supportive if they are motivated to get back. But that's where I'm gonna, there is, like, I learn things from the Quran. That's where I learn everything. And I'm kind of connecting what God says in the Quran with what I see as a doctor and how I understand humans as a doctor, and it makes perfect sense. It is the only, God says in the Quran that drugs, drugs and intoxicants and gambling, or hamr in Arabic, anything that intoxicates you, anything that changes your mind, why they are bad. God says, "O you who believe, intoxicants and gambling and altars set up and dividing by arrows," which is like basically raffling. You can look it up. It's something to do with like how the meat is divided. Are filth, devil's work. Avoid them, that you may be successful. Surely the devil is trying to introduce hatred and animosity among you by means of intoxicants and gambling, and to keep you away from prayer and to cause you to forget about God. Will you not then stop? And then it ends with, "And obey God and obey the messenger, but be careful. If you turn away, then our messenger's duty is only to deliver." So God tells you, hey, look, man, you should do this, but be careful. If you decide not to, then he just needed to tell you. It's not a job for anybody to save you from anything. Like if you're an addict, it's your job. We can choose to help or not to help, whether it's with education or financially or rehab or whatever, support, but it's your job to fix yourself, just like it was my job to fix myself. If you're an addict and your mommy and daddy won't give you $50 because, oh, I swear it's for my new ballet class, you can't be mad at them. You're a liar. And they know you're a liar. And they're just tolerating your ass because they love you. And that's like one thing that I hate the most about addicts who are in the midst of their addiction. They blame everybody else except the devil, except the one who has to be blamed, themselves. You chose to serve the devil, and you don't like the consequences, and you're blaming everybody else. You took the drugs, you didn't listen to the advice. But God says in the Quran that He wants you back. So if you are a Muslim, there's plenty of Muslims who are addicts. And if you are not a Muslim and you're an addict, you should probably look into the Quran. I made a whole bunch of videos about what the Quran says and all that, so you can just watch it, whatever you want, and even ask any questions. But if you're an addict, you should really. There's a message in there for you. But if you are a Muslim, you gotta understand this: that God gave you tools which you are to use to extricate yourself from the garbage pile you put yourself in through your bad decisions, through your lack of faith. You didn't believe God, so in chapter 5, verses 90 to 93 is what I just recited. And there God warned you, this is filth, devil's work, and what the devil is trying to do to you, to us, destroy our communities, which is exactly what happens. It's like that's a prophecy. If you guys do this, then this is what's going to happen. And that's, go to Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia, go to the Skid Row in LA. Those are all drug-fueled communities. That's what happens. So you have to fix this, but that's where it starts, is people have to obey God, and you just have to convince people that this is the right thing to do, because it is the right thing to do, and it will literally save their children, save their communities. Otherwise, you're going to be looking like a zombie market, and your kids are going to be walking by that. You're going to be exposing them to all this infection of addiction. That's how important this is. And God tells us your tool is prayer. Your tool for this particular job is prayer. If you are a Muslim, God says in the Quran that you have to pray. Now there are communities among Muslims that some will say, oh, you have to pray only 3 times a day. A mainstream Islam says you have to pray 5 times a day. It doesn't matter which one you run into. You know what? The more prayers you do, the better for you. But if you want to do only, there are for sure 100% 3 prayers in the Quran, and there's an implication for more, but that's besides the point. But you have to do at least minimum to help yourself, because guess what? God says in the Quran, and do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying. So if you just pray as a Muslim, you are automatically protected from the 90% of the negative effects of drugs, because at the most you could, if you really wanted to fuel your addiction, do something after Isha so you can sleep it off till Fajr. Or so Isha is the night prayer and Fajr is the dawn prayer. And sometimes the night is long, right? You got 12 hours. People fail. And people I know that a lot of people oh man, don't be saying that, this is strictly haram, all that. Yeah, there are a lot of things that are strictly haram and people still do them, and they repent and they're fighting to get better. And so that's what it is. And God in the Quran says, do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying. God wants these people back. That's the whole point. It's a cure, but you just got to stick to it. And if nothing, it will prevent you from destroying your life, because you pray and you don't have time to be high all the time because you pray. That is the protection. That is really the only way, other than helping people with dependence when they want to quit, so bringing them down from benzos, bringing them down from alcohol, from heroin addiction, withdrawals. We can do that. Medically, that's easy to do. Dependence is a lot easier to deal with than addiction. Addiction is the hard part. Addiction is the hard part. That's where, your mind has to fix. I can take away the diarrhea and the shakes and the chills and all that with medicine, but I have, you have to fix your mind. You have to fix how you perceive the world, and that is where the Quran comes in. And that is where these tools that God commands you in the Quran come in. God says, and recite what has been revealed to you from your Lord and keep up prayer. For surely prayer protects against indecency and evil. And remembrance of God is akbar. Remembrance of God is greatest. When Muslims say Allahu Akbar, it just means God is greatest. That's all it means. The word Akbar is like greatest, right? So this verse says remembrance of God. And if you consider those other verses that are in Surah or chapter 5, verses 90 to 93, God tells us what the devil wants to do with intoxicants is to keep us away from prayer and cause us to remember, to forget about God. So all the devil has to do is get us high to keep us away from prayer. And that's true, because that is one time where God in the Quran forbids you to pray is when you are intoxicated. I don't want to talk to you. You don't know what you are saying. You don't know what you're saying, so I don't want to hear it. That's what God says. But as soon as you know what you are saying, I want you to come back and pray. So the devil knows this. Boom. Here you go. Alter your mind and see where that goes. It becomes a habit. It becomes an escape. It becomes a coping mechanism. It becomes your life. And then it's very difficult to change. So that is the warning for people that have never tried drugs. The other warning is be careful of your doctors, because what you wouldn't try from a meth house, you may try from an Adderall bottle pill, because you don't perceive the risk as the same, but it is. Stimulants, they're just as addictive. You had the crack epidemic, just a stimulant. Cocaine, all that was recently. Adderall is a stimulant. Meth is a stimulant. All the same. Experience is the same. It's the experience that's important. And you can justify it any which way you want. It doesn't matter to me if you take drugs or not. But if your life gets destroyed from them, it will matter to you. It's a contagious disease. Addiction is a contagious disease. You have to be vigilant against it because it's destructive. When it captures the mind of your family, when it captures your own mind, it is an obsession, it is a mission, it is very, very difficult to treat. And if you catch it simply by trying substances, you don't know if it's going to affect you like mild COVID, or you don't know if you're going to end up in a hospital on a ventilator, or you don't know if you're going to be one of the 100,000 people that died last year from drugs. 100,000 people died from overdoses and drug-related complications. That's a lot of people. Mostly young people. That is a far more devastating impact on that age group than COVID is. That demographic, young people. COVID is nothing to them. Drugs destroy them. It's like Passover. Give me one of every whatever. It's decimation is what it is. Give me one of every 10 young people. It's not that bad, but still, it's a huge number of people. So you have to, and these are just people that died. Go to Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia. Go to Death Row, Skid Row in LA. Those are just the more famous examples. Go in your own city. Go find them. There is an encampment of dope fiends, people who are struggling, and they will be out there in the cold because they're addicted to drugs and they're unable to process information accurately. And you don't want your kid to be that. So you will give up your whole wealth for them to keep getting them high until you can't afford it no more, and then you kick them out. They destroy your family as well. It is a severe disease with implications that are mind-blowing, and it is mind-blowing that people don't think that it will come to their house. COVID certainly did, didn't it? And there's always a chance that this may as well. So people really need to be aware of the magnitude of risk that their society has imparted on them by allowing a disease such as addiction to spread uncontrollably through their neighborhoods. And alcohol is a part of this. Imagine if your crack dealer just set up a nice little crack shop next to your house, like bar owners do in bars. That's just as destructive. In any case, God warns us about this. If you want to give your kids a fighting chance, if you are a Muslim yourself, or if you're an addict, it doesn't matter. Honestly, it doesn't matter if you're just an average person. You should pray. And you have to pray because Muslims pray. And whoever prays has immediately been vaccinated with something that has a 90% efficacy rate of keeping you away from drugs, and a 100% efficacy rate, or 99% efficacy rate in keeping it a mild illness, because you cannot be getting high while you are of the praying ones, while you are of the Muslims. You cannot get high often enough to destroy your life unless that is an overdose of heroin, which is why I said 99%, because you will die and then it's all loss. But anybody can die on any drug, except that we know is of the greater risk. So that's it. It's almost 30-minute video. There's so much more to say about addiction, but you should be careful of addiction. It is a clear and present danger. In prayer is the safety.
1,000 feet. Keep left at the fork. Follow signs for sulfur.
And that's pretty much it. So that's it.